Jason, thank you so much for joining us.
Grace, thank you so much for having me. I wish it was under better circumstances. Obviously, we've lost quite a legend, and it's someone who I think I'm a few years older than you, but someone who came up in conservative politics. And Rush Limbaugh's 1992 book, The Way Things Ought to Be, was, of course, one of the precursors to the 1994 Republican Revolution, and someone who just meant so much to the birth of conservative talk radio. It's a sad day, but also a day to think back about all the great things he accomplished.
Exactly, Jason. And I know we're going to have a lot of people calling in with memories. They're already leaving them on our voicemails. And it just goes to show you that you can have radio be very informative, but also very fun. And I think people really appreciated that. But Jason, I do want to ask you a few questions here because I've wanted to get you on the show for a long time. And I know you had such a big role in the Trump administration. And so my first question is, last night during the town hall, what were your initial thoughts when Joe Biden basically said that they did not have a vaccine when he came into office?
Well, my first thought was this is exactly what President Trump warned about, that this was that Joe was going to come in, that he was not going to have a plan, that, yes, he had months where he was in his basement and supposedly doing these COVID planning meetings and other things. But look, I don't know if he was catching up on The Lion King on Netflix or if he was playing Pinochle or what Biden was doing, maybe tossing the football out the window with the grandkids. But clearly he was not coming up with any kind of COVID plan or even some kind of COVID distribution plan. And heck, if we wanted talk about the vaccine. I mean, remember Joe and Kamala were notoriously anti-vaxxers for quite a while.
Right.
But the first thing was just, I think, a frustration just as an American. Putting the party label and my Trump affinity to the side for a moment, the fact that Americans now have a president who it seemed indifferent to the vaccine being developed and who now seems to be asleep at the switch when it comes to this. But also, too, as we talk about the Biden's recommitment to legalizing 11 million people here illegally, it was almost all of the things that President Trump warned about seem to be coming true.
And I agree with you there, Jason. And there's another point that I would like to play a sound cut for you, partially because we haven't gotten it in yet in the show, but I also do want to get your take on it. This is one of the moments that Biden's getting a lot of pushback on, even from some people on the left. This is cut 18.
You know, Chinese leaders, if you know anything about Chinese history, it has always been the time when China has been victimized by the outer world is when they haven't been unified at home. So the central, vastly overstated, the central principle of Xi Jinping is that there must be a united, tightly controlled China. And he uses his rationale for the things he does based on that. I point out to him, no American president can be sustained as a president if he doesn't reflect the values of the United States. And so the idea, I'm not going to speak out against what he's doing in Hong Kong, what he's doing with the Uyghurs in western mountains of China, and Taiwan trying to end the one China policy by making it forceful. I said, and by the he said he gets it. Culturally, there are different norms at each country, and their leaders are expected to follow.
Jason, I know that's a lot to break down because it kind of went off the rails at the end. But what do you think about that comment?
Well, I mean, first, Joe seems to be what he seems to be saying is that Xi Jinping needs to do what he needs to do to keep his country together, whether that be throwing 1 million Uyghurs into concentration camps in Western China, whether that means to completely steamroll past the peaceful democratic transition that was established for Hong Kong. It's why you're seeing so many businesses and you're seeing that financial center absolutely be depleted. And then, of course, we talk about Taiwan, which I hate to say it, but I think it's probably only a matter of time until mainland China just goes and takes Taiwan over, even though they're a free and fair democracy. But look, I don't know if there's some connection there, if it's, whether it's Hunter's cash or if it's maybe Eric Swalwell's been spending some time with Joe Biden. But, Joe Biden's always been real cozy with Xi Jinping. And don't forget the video clip where Joe Biden bragged about having spent more one-on-one time with Xi Jinping than any other American alive today. Joe thinks that because he knows somebody, that he can read them, that he can figure them out, that he can manipulate them in the fashion he wants to. But it sounds to me like China's just playing Joe Biden like a fiddle.
Yeah, he's become the new patsy. And I think that China's probably very happy about this transition to the Biden administration. Guys, I'm talking to Jason Miller. You can follow him on Twitter at Jason Miller in D.C. Jason, another thing I had to ask you about was Jen Psaki made a comment yesterday during her press conference where she said that this president was not going to base his foreign policy off of the last president. And I thought to myself, I understand some people weren't crazy about Trump's tweeting or, certain things, but his foreign policy, by all accounts, was pretty incredible.
Yeah, and look, just the fact that Joe Biden hasn't been able to move as quickly to reverse some of the trade policies with China, and he hasn't made any sudden moves to reverse what President Trump did with the troop drawdowns, both for Afghanistan and for Iraq, tells you that even Joe Biden can read the tea leaves a little bit here and realize that the country has changed. This is no longer a nation that's going to put up with we're now at a 19-year war in Afghanistan. That we realized that it was a mistake to go into Iraq. There were no weapons of mass destruction. How many thousands of American lives and trillions of American dollars were spent trying to rebuild, first of all, knock off the leadership of and then try to rebuild a country that fundamentally probably isn't going to be our friend. And Joe's part of that old guard. Joe's part of that Beltway first. Let's go in the military industrial complex. Let's build up and just keep sending our troops overseas with no end in sight. And the American public's tired of it.
Yeah, and I guess my other question for you, Jason, is because I've been asking a lot of people about this coronavirus, the lockdowns. I know Trump, when he was running for president, he really wanted to end the shutdowns. And one of his famous things was, we can't have the cure be worse than the disease. And now it seems like with the Biden administration, whether he's wearing a mask or telling people, even after you get vaccinated, we got to keep the masks on. Do you see there being a point where people, whether it's businesses or schools, just say enough is enough, we can't do this anymore?
I think in particular you're starting to see it already with schools. I think people have really, look, I have both 12-year-old and 4-year-old daughters at home with my wife and I, and we realize how much they're missing out by not being in person for their schooling. I think a lot of folks, whether they're in red states or blue states, are realizing we're almost having an entire lost year or lost years with our kids not being in school. But I think also, too, with what this has done to women in the workforce and the way that women are losing their jobs or unable to be in the workforce at the levels they were under President Trump, because so many women are having to stay home with the kids and do distance learning with their kids, and this is causing a real problem, especially when you take a look at entire segments and sectors of society, the restaurant and hotel and bar industries, tourism industries being completely wiped out. We're going to have to start moving forward here. And if Joe Biden and Dr. Fauci keep moving the goalpost on when Americans actually will have received that vaccine, people don't want to say, well, hey, maybe it's June, maybe it's July, maybe it's Christmas of next year. At a certain point, that's not acceptable if you have to keep the lights on.
Exactly. My next question is a little bit more personal, but I know that you're very close with President Trump, and I've been thinking about this over the course of the last few weeks. There's been two major takedowns over the last month, and one of them was Andrew Cuomo's image. It was kind of shattered. And one of them was the Lincoln Project. They've kind of melted down. And I have to ask you, Jason, out of those two, which one do you think Donald Trump is enjoying watching more?
You know what? I think this one might actually surprise you. I don't know if I wouldn't say enjoy for either one. I think with regard to the Lincoln Project, I think he's just disgusted. I think it's just so sick when you think about a fully grown man interacting with young boys as young as 14. That's just disgusting. I mean, I just hate to even, and the fact that these other Lincoln Project people were covering for him, and it's just foul and disgusting. And I think with regard to Andrew Cuomo, I think there's a real hypocrisy from the media, the way that they will build someone up and prop them up and give them Emmys and give them time to write books and turn a blind eye to what's happening. And then when it does come out that there are cover-ups and they're intentionally lying about numbers or leading to deaths and other things, that's really problematic. So I think it's both a sense of disappointment and kind of shaking his head when it comes to Andrew Cuomo, but pure disgust when it comes to the Lincoln Project and those sickos who are covered up for that, two really unfortunate situations.
Yeah, and it gets more disgusting as time goes on and we figure out more about it. And Ryan Gerdusky whiskey has just been uncovering more and more about that sordid story.
He's been great.
Yeah, he's fantastic. Jason, my last question for you. Give us your take on what's going to happen in 2022. I know that the office of the former president sends out a lot of statements, but what do you see happening with Republicans, whether it be in the Senate or the House? What do you see going on in 2022?
Well, I think it's important to keep in mind President Trump really is the current party, and he's the future of the Republican Party. He's the biggest name in American politics. He's the biggest draw. We do much better when President Trump is on the ballot, so we're going to have to work extra hard in 2022 since he's not on. I do think we'll win back the House and the Senate, but not just that, we're going to win back with some more America First type candidates who believe in ending these endless wars, who believe that we need to continue to have conservative judiciary, some really good folks. So we're going to be making sure we get the right ones in there, but the president's going to be at the front leading us to victory.
This is Jason Miller. You can follow him at Jason Miller in DC. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. We hope you'll come back on the show soon. All right, guys, we'll be right back. This is the Grace Curley Show.
She's never held office, but she paid the whiskey priest's monthly rent once. She's Grace Curley.